Welcome back, Heat Seekers. You ready to win with us in Week 9? You better lock it in, sit tight, and let's get to these wide receiver tiers. First and foremost, though, remember, Week 9 buys are at the bottom of the screen. Detroit, Seattle, Tampa, and Washington are all on bye this week. Kraig, wide receiver 1 overall tiers, pretty straightforward. These are all guys that just could have a monster week any given week, and in the case of Cooper Kupp, is every week, it seems like these days. If you had to pick one of these guys that could have a closer to bust type performance week 1, who would be that guy?
AJ Brown, just based on the matchup against the Rams. If they decide to deploy, they haven't done a ton of it this year, but if the Rams decide to use Jalen Ramsey on him, it would just be a tougher matchup than the rest of these guys have. Kupp against Tennessee, Hill, Green Bay, which means Adams with Kansas City, Jamar Chase, Cleveland, Stefon Diggs, Jacksonville. All of those are just pretty nice matchups to go along with the production they've had this year and the talent that they have. AJ Brown belongs up there with him, I agree, but if you're having me pick one that feels like it might be more of a letdown spot, it would be him.
So another group of strong, really the wide receiver 1, top 6, and wide receiver 1 overall. These are all must-start guys, right? You don't have any concerns if people are putting these guys in their lineups, no matter who the matchup is?
No, I don't really have concerns based on matchup here. If you have Cooper Rush again at quarterback, which can't be ruled out based on how things went last week, I do think that brings down the upside for CD and Amari, and they are going against Denver, who has some nice cornerbacks. We'll see if Kyle Fuller gets traded here, as there's rumors of at the trade deadline. They still have Surtain, and then it's fallen off because of injuries. They have a nice secondary, and if you're going to take that step down from Dak, those two would have a little bit of concern for me. Probably not reaching that, and potentially being wide receiver too. I mean, they might fall down a couple tiers for me, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't really have much concerns. In theory, all these guys should be in your lineups, even with backup quarterbacks and such, because they're just, you never know when they're going to have that monster game because they have the upside and the ability to. So as we're talking through these, let us know in the comments below what you think of these guys. If there's anybody that you're concerned about this week, going into week 9, we've got some interesting bye weeks. So there are some high quality wide receivers that are not playing this week. So just be mindful. Some of these guys did leave games over the weekend. I know Justin Jefferson left the game a little early, limping. So be mindful of that. Keep an eye on the injury report there. But if he's healthy, these are all very trustworthy wide receiver 1s. Any concerns here? Any food for thought that you have on this wide receiver 1 tier?
Not really. They all have decent matchups. Deontay Johnson has continued to survive. Ben Roethlisberger's lack of what we've seen in the past. What we've come to know of Ben Roethlisberger passing the ball, he's more dink and dunk short stuff, which benefits Deontay, which is why he's up there. Same sort of thing with volume. Brandin Cooks most weeks continues to have that volume, and I think that'll continue even if Tyrod is back, because we saw that at the start of the season when he was there. And the rest of these guys, Jerry Jeudy, did all right. We'll have to see where Diggs goes. He'll probably be more on Sutton, you would think, but either way, I like these guys as wide receiver 1s, and some of these guys will fall off. We have too many guys as far as wide receiver 1s on here, but if we're talking potential that upside to hit it, I like these guys.
But it's a fun group of wide receiver 1s because any one of these guys could go off. Even when you look at a guy like Michael Pittman, the team's been struggling to find other receivers around him. He's still 2 touchdowns and a good amount of catches and yardage. He's had a really solid year, even with the hurting wide receiver depth in Indy. It's a dangerous tier of New York injured wide receivers. And that's such a weird thing, though, in this season, the way that the Giants receiving corps they just keep getting hurt. At what point do we say we just can't trust them in the lineups because who knows what we're going to get each week?
It's just going to be a matter of who's really healthy to beat that target hog. Shepard got hurt. We'll see if he plays. Toney had been hurt and on a snap count got hurt again with a different issue, but came back to finish the game. Galladay didn't play. It sounded like he was leaning towards playing, but unfortunately this year he just hasn't been healthy. So yeah, if any one of them is out there, they'll probably get quite a few targets, but who knows who's going to be healthy for him.
That's some of these other players in this list, like Julio. You don't know what to expect, but with Henry down, they really do need a healthy Julio out there so that they can really try to move the ball. You really need your passing attack to be at 100% so that they can maybe help try to offset some of the loss you're going to have there at the running back.
And with Cole Beasley, I think it's worth pointing out here, he really saw a huge uptick in targets with Dawson Knox out, so that's something to pay attention to. If Knox is going to not play again, it really seemed like he was that replacement just in terms of where Josh Allen was looking. Emmanuel Sanders was blanked on the day. He didn't have a fantasy point. So something to think about with that. I'm not saying Sanders will be blanked again or Cole's going to have 10 to 12 catches, but if they're going to be throwing the ball as they clearly like to and the matchup fits, which again, it does here for them, just be having success in throwing the ball against Jacksonville, Cole is someone that we had lower. It'd be worth being mindful of.
Yeah, and I want to say on one of our shows, whether it's a live stream or one of these tier shows, we mentioned Emmanuel Sanders. Some weeks you're going to get multiple touchdowns. He's going to look real good and give you plenty of fantasy points. And then other weeks, you just don't know which weeks he's going to be really successful because of all the options that is available to Josh Allen in the passing game, whether it's Diggs or Beasley or the running backs or Knox when he was healthy. So it's a buyer beware and play at your own risk on a weekly basis. I feel better with Beasley out of the two just because of the safer floor, but I tend to be a safer floor guy when I'm setting my lineups. So that flex tier, that's beefy. There's a lot in there. Russell Gage stands out as a really intriguing option with Ridley away from the team, but really now Pitt's got to be wide receiver 1. And then what do you expect there?
Tight end 1. Yes, Russell Gage, I think, is going to be the de facto wide receiver 1 positional designation. If you're talking about target share, it'll probably be Kyle Pitts. So we'll see. I think there's a couple other names that we might be mentioning later on here that'll be interesting guys that may be available on waivers to take a look at. Looking at other guys in here, we'll have to see if Mike White continues to have that offense humming there. And with the New York Jets on Thursday night, Crowder certainly has viability as a flex play with general target share that he gets, and then also just seemingly a much more efficient offense. Devonta Smith's the other way. For most of the season, we've talked about him higher up, but it just isn't clicking right between him and Jalen Hurts where you can trust him to be a wide receiver 2 or more, especially if they're going to be running the ball like we saw last week more, and then going against a team that has given up oodles of yards against the run. Against the Chargers this week, I think you might have another potential letdown game here for Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
Rashad Bateman is a guy that I think has seen like 5 or 6 targets both the games, but he only has 3 or 4 catches, so he's got some appeal, and long term I think he's great, but I don't really know you can trust him as a wide receiver 2 despite the value attached to the name at this point.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of boom and bust opportunity here, and definitely things to be concerned about. There's a lot to take in there. In my mind, I don't trust most of them, though. Quite honestly, it's hard to really trust like a T.Y. Hilton because he keeps getting hurt and going out in games. Like, I need you on the field the whole time. I think the more interesting ones, that for me at least, would be like a Tim Patrick, Devontae Parker, who's been getting a fairly ton amount of targets here recently. Who in this list of a sleeper, if you had to say, you know what, I really feel good about these guys producing this week, who are those guys for you?
One of the guys would be Tajay Sharp. They're continuing to throw the ball in Atlanta, and with Ridley gone, he's risen to the top. After you have that Kyle Pitts, Russell Gage tier, he's the 3rd guy, and you have to include Patterson, whether you want to include him as a running back or a wide receiver. He's getting attention. But on a team that's trying to play up tempo and throw a lot, he's been relevant, and he's someone that you've had a couple of weeks where you'd be happy with the production you got from him as a flex play. Right before the bye, he had 4 catches on 5 targets. This past week, he had 5 catches on 6 targets. If you're getting like that out of a flex play, or if you're playing in a deeper league where you have to start 3 wide receivers and maybe a flex or even more, he's a guy that, hey, at least he's getting the attention. Some of these, like Elijah Moore and Keelan Cole, you've really had just 1 week that sort of Mike White explosion, and are you banking on that happening again? Other guys like MVS we thought maybe last week, but he was out. Cobb, touchdown saved his week for him. Without those, he just wasn't getting the ball. It's just a whole lot of weird situations, and someone like Cedric Wilson, who we might be recommending higher. Michael Gallup is back. I think that at least there's splitting time between the two of them. Gallup doesn't come back and just take over what he had, but Wilson, who had some value, is knocked down. A guy like Robbie Anderson, who had just been getting targeted the ball because they don't have a whole lot else there right now in Carolina, he isn't catching it and not getting you yards. It's hard to trust. At what point do they stop throwing him the ball because they're not getting production out of him? It's really tough.
It is. This is definitely a dangerous tier to have to try to live in and figure out what to do here. If you have questions, as always, hit us up here. Hit us up on our Twitter handles. Shoot us a DM. Jump in the Discord and talk with the entire community that's over there chit-chatting. And then drop a like if you like the video, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.